How's everybody? How you doing? My name is Tsikwe Molobye and welcome to Lockdown Drinks. So a little bit about myself. I've been brewing both commercially and also like home brewing as well. Craft beer specifically for the past, I think, 5.5 years. Brewing is something I really enjoy quite a lot. I like brewing different types of beers, from your very simple but difficult to brew at times, lagers, to your very, complex, sour beers, or saisons, if I can put it that way as well. I also enjoy brewing different kinds of alcoholic beverages, if I can put it that way, ciders too, and messing around with yeast. I find yeast to be a very interesting microbial. I mean, it's very interesting to find out that we've been using yeast for many years, right? And it was only in the late 1800s, I think, when it was actually really discovered that, it wasn't actually a chemical reaction that made alcohol. Actually, alcohol is made by these small little microbials called yeast. So how yeast really work? Yeast actually eats the sugar that you find in your base, or the base that you will be making your alcoholic beverage from. It may be a beer or a wine or a spirit, and then it converts that into carbon dioxide and as well as alcohol and some esters as well. And one other very important thing to know that is that different types of yeast strains give out different types of flavor profiles. So it's very, very important when you are making either it be your cider or your wine or your mead, that you are very how can I say this, selective in what kind of yeast strand you may be using, basically. So please go to our website, Drinks on Lockdown, or Lockdown Drinks rather, and then you will find I've written about 11 simple recipes that you can make in your kitchen for yourself, basically, because I think you probably have noticed right now, it's lockdown. It's lockdown. You can't, the sale of alcohol has been banned. You can't go out and buy. It's illegal right now to go and sell, and also to go and buy alcohol. And then now we've noticed a trend in the supermarkets that there's a big shortage of yeast. And that's mainly because people are now making their own alcoholic beverages in their own kitchens, which I find is very cool and awesome, actually. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to write this little ebook, and then also have a few video tutorials to help people how to make it quite safely. Now, a few questions that people were asking me. Number one, is it legal to brew your own alcoholic beverage at home? Yes, it is legal. It is completely legal to do so, so long as you are not selling it, right? It is legal to brew for your own private consumption in your own home, but it's illegal to sell whatever beer or wine or mtombochi that you're making as well. Basically, it's illegal to do that, particularly right now during the COVID-19 crisis that we are facing. It is quite serious. We need to observe all the laws that we are given basically right now currently, just to flatten the curve, if I can put out in that way. Another question I was asked as well is, would it give me a pooza face? I laughed a lot about this because pooza face, in the townships, it means I don't know how to really describe it, but it mainly you can see somebody who has a pooza face because it's mainly due to when you have been abusing alcohol for quite some time, and therefore you will have a pooza face, if we put it in that way, basically. And what causes a pooza face primarily is the dehydration of your skin, because alcohol does do so. Alcohol does dehydrate you, so it's very important as you are drinking or consuming your alcoholic beverage that you must, number one, do not abuse alcohol. Let's just state that as a fact. And then number two, always stay hydrated and maintain a good, healthy lifestyle. That way you minimize your risk or chances of getting the pooza face, as they call it, right there. They said, another question they asked me, that will it give me a mkaba? So mkaba is a belly boop, or a beer belly. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for, basically. Yeah, it will definitely. It also depends on which alcoholic beverage you're making, right? Different beers or different wines, or they have different types of calories in them, and alcohol, what it does as well, it makes it very easy for your body to store fat reserves, calories as fat reserves. It makes it very easy to do so. And what typically happens is when people are drinking, they tend to have a bit of chips or meats or steak or really heavy foods that are really fatty and processed and stuff. So it's very important to maintain and watch your diet and watch the calories that you take in, and also exercise as well and drink a lot of water. That's the main thing that I will say over there basically. So yeah, it is safe. It can give you a pooza face if you do drink too much, if you do abuse alcohol. You can get a beer belly, as they call it, if you don't watch your calories basically. So rule of thumb is, drink responsibly, just maintain a healthy lifestyle. Now, what are we doing today? We're going to be making a pineapple cider. As you would know, that ciders are primarily, the base is made out of apples. I'm going to be using 2 packets over here of the Golden Delicious apples. And in the research that I was doing in making the cider is that, you want to have a nice variety of apples that you, in making your cider, because different types of apple types give you different types of flavor profiles in your ciders basically. I'm not really a cider maker, I'm a beer maker, but I would tend to agree with that. And then I also have, pineapple juice. So also, again, due to panic buying, there's been a shortage of, pineapples in my region where I go and buy my groceries. So fortunately, I was able to find, fruit juice, pineapple juice, 100% pure. Make sure that the juice that you use is 100% pure. And then you must also read the packet as well and see if it has any preservatives. It's important that it doesn't have those benzoites and sulfites. Don't use that, because those preservatives will tend to, hinder the work of the yeast, or even kill the yeast basically. And because yeast is a microbial, preservatives are made to actually kill microbials that will be inside of your juice basically. Other preservatives or weird, scientific names like ascorbic acid and citric acid, those are good, those are fine. You do find them naturally in fruits and vegetables. I mean, ascorbic acid is vitamin C, so it is fine, it is okay. So you will need, to make myself a 10-liter, cider, for 3 liters of pineapple juice. I've got 2 packets of Golden Delicious apples. I've got myself, 750 grams of caramel sugar, just to give it a nice little, what sugar does, it just increases the alcohol level basically in whatever, base that you might be fermenting, because more sugar, that's more food for the yeast. The more the yeast eats, the more it gets to produce, carbon dioxide and alcohol, which is what we want to create basically. Then I have another, 1 kilogram of, white sugar. And the other utensils that you will be needing is your fermentation bucket, which is very crucial. It's very important that you make sure that it's clean, it's sanitized. And the main reason why is that you want to limit your chances of infections inside of your cider. And the reason why is because we also have yeast, wild yeast around us. We also have other bacteria on our skin, also in the air as well basically. So before you transfer your cider into the bucket, make sure that you clean it, you sanitize it. If you don't have these brewing detergents, you can just use normal dishwashing liquid, but then also rinse it properly, then rinse it with hot water. What the hot water will do is just kill all the microbials that are bad that you will find inside of your bucket, and that will make sure that the bucket is quite sterile and sanitized basically. So make sure that your bucket is clean. You can use any kind of bucket. I've seen some people use these 5-liter bottles. If you're a home brewer, you can use your home brewing bucket as well. I find that more effective than this actual bucket. Another thing is, when you are fermenting as well, don't close your bucket too tight because it might explode. Close it, but also you want to limit the chances of it being exposed to the oxygen as well, and also the elements, but you must leave it just a little bit open, so they can at least breathe. Some of the CO2 can actually leave the bucket itself over there basically. I have over here a chopping block, obviously to chop the apples. I have for myself that's what you guys, we call it gisef, a little something just to sift out, the particles, the chopped apples, as I'm going to be transferring from the pot into the bucket. Obviously a knife to chop the apples over here. Then I have myself Anchor's, brewer's yeast. It's pretty cheap. You will find it in almost any supermarket. But I don't know right now during the COVID-19 crisis that we are facing if you might be finding yourself some brewer's yeast. In the next video, I'll show you how to make yourself your own wild culture of yeast. The only thing about with wild culture yeast is that you never know what kind of flavor profiles you might get out of your cider, basically, or your wine, or maybe your beer, because different types of yeast give different types of flavor profiles. And people have asked me what's the difference between bread yeast and also with brewer's yeast. I mean, bread yeast, as it does say, it's made for making bread. Brewer's yeast for brewing, basically. This type of yeast can withstand living in an environment with this high alcohol levels, not so much with bread yeast, basically. And what bread yeast tends to do, it makes the flavor of whatever beer that you're making or cider that you're making to be a bit bready, so you want to avoid that. But if you can't find anything else, bread yeast will still do its job. However, I prefer that you use brewer's yeast. If you're also a home brewer, I mean, Fermentis US04, US05 will also still do the job, basically. It'll also be very interesting to see how it may come out if you do use a saison yeast, basically from Lallemand. I also have, just to intensify the flavors of the pineapple, is this pineapple essence. I'm just going to use about a teaspoon of it. Don't use too much of it, because what flavoring does tends to give, that, I don't know, that aftertaste is not really nice. So you don't want to overdo it over there. If you don't want to use it, don't use it. I just think that I might need to use it, because I find that if you do use actual fruit, they tend to give it a much more pungent flavor than just the juice, basically. Then I have a nice big 10-liter pot over here. That's mainly for boiling the apples and the juice, and also water as well. Then I'm going to add some sugar too. The main reason why you want to do that is to make sure that everything dissolves. The sugar dissolves, firstly, number one. Then you get to extract most of the juices out of the apples. But most importantly is that you want to kill whatever bacteria or wild yeast that may be around in the environment, basically, the cider. Let me put it that way, basically. Then I have a little prima stofo over here. This is just, you can do this in your kitchen. I just decided to, work over here away from the wife and kids in the lab over here, not to disturb everybody while they are sleeping. So yeah, this is what it is. So what I'm going to do right now, step one, is to make sure that, everything is, your apples first are thoroughly rinsed, and then you're going to chop them. If you have if you can get pineapples, preferably that you use 2 large pineapples, peel them, and then obviously rinse them, then peel them as well, chop them as well into nice fine pieces as well. Then you're going to take the apples and the pineapples, and you're going to throw them into the pot over here, into this nice big pot. You're going to do that as well together with the sugar too. You're going to put them as well with about 5 liters of water. Bring that up to a boil for about 30 minutes. After you've done that for 30 minutes, you'll let it to cool down to room temperature. If you have a thermometer, you can easily measure that. If you have a smartphone, there are these really cool apps that can actually help you to measure the temperature of your the cider that you're creating, basically. Then once you've done that, you'll be able to sift it from there into your bucket. After you've sifted into your bucket, then you'll top it up as well with water that has been pre-boiled and cooled down. The reason why you want to pre-boil the water is that, yes, there is still some microbials in the water as well, and you want to limit the chances of, infecting your cider as well, basically. It will be difficult to get that completely, how can I say this, wild yeast or wild bacteria proof. Because look at the bucket that I'm using. You open it, there's still chances of it catching, wild yeast around, but you want to minimize the chances of it getting infected over there. So what I'm going to do is run to my kitchen, rinse these over here, come and chop them up, and then boil them all together for about 30 minutes, and then we're going to go to the next step. Cool.